So a Muslim and a Christian walk into a podcast studio. Hello, and welcome to the Emad and Nick podcast, where we explore different topics from the perspective of Islam and Christianity, tackling some of life's biggest questions and having fun doing so. Hi, Emad. How are you doing?
Hey, Nick. I'm good, man. How are you doing?
Good. It's good to see you.
Good to see you.
Awesome. Well, let's start off this first one by talking a little bit about your faith, a little bit about my faith, just sort of like a quick rundown, 30,000 level overview of what is Islam and maybe sort of how that affects your day-to-day life and how it maybe shapes your worldview. And then I'll kind of go into my faith, Christianity, and do the same thing.
Sure. So just to start off, I haven't always had a beard like this, and Nick can testify to that fact. Yeah. Like this is the longest I've ever had it. So I don't know if I'm going to keep it this long, but I just wanted to start off so the viewers don't think I've always had a beard like this.
You were born with that beard.
I was born. Yeah.
Your beard is good.
Thanks.
Just a compliment about your beard being good.
Thanks. You're good at shortcuts. You're good at finding shortcuts. I love that show.
Yeah, it's a great show.
Yeah, but Islam 101. So just the basics. We believe in one God, one creator of the heavens and the earth. We believe that this creator sent messengers or prophets, starting from Adam, peace be upon him, all the way to Muhammad, peace be upon him. So we believe that each nation and each tribe at one point in time was sent a messenger with the message of, in Arabic, we say, La ilaha illallah. There is no deity worthy of worship except Allah or God. Allah is the name in Arabic for God. Mm-hmm. So I know one misconception that some people may have, if they don't know the Arabic language, when they hear the word Allah, it sounds like something strange or something other than God, or
right, like that's the name of your God, right? So like in Jewish history, there is the name Yahweh, which is the name that they attribute to their God. That's not the name, or that's not the word for God, but that's sort of a name that is given in the Old Testament for their God. So that was a good distinction for me, kind of learning a little bit more about Islam as well, is that Allah is just the Arabic word for God, not the name of your God.
Yes, I think it can be both. So we actually, God gave us 99 names. So, for example, he's the creator. He's the merciful. Allah, it literally means the God. So if you break it down, El-Ilah, Allah, the God. So, and I don't know if you knew this as well, Nick, but like Christians who, let's just say, are in the Middle East, that's the same word that they use. Like, I think that's the same word that's in their Bible is Allah. But anyways, continue going on. So we believe in one God. God sent messengers. We believe in 5 major pillars. Believing in one God, believing in the prophets, fasting, giving to charity, performing Hajj. If Hajj means pilgrimage, and if you're able to afford it, and if you're healthy enough to at least once in your life go to the city of Mecca and perform the pilgrimage. So that's basically, if I can just sum up Islam, Islam, it means obtaining peace by submitting yourself to the creator, to the one God creator. You're obtaining peace through that. So, Islam means peace, but it also means peace through obtaining peace through worshiping, or what I'm trying to say. Yeah, but that's if I could put Islam in as simple as possible, it's we believe, and then we're definitely going to have different conversations about this. But we believe in one God, but like in the fullest sense of the word, like monotheism, very similar to the same way that Jews view God as well. I'm sure we're going to be talking about different subjects and stuff, so I don't want to lay it on too heavy now.
No, that's cool.
people
It's good to
listening.
get a really good overview on that. So one thing that you mentioned was Hajj, and I think it'd be cool to do, maybe different episodes of this where we even break down and go into deeper detail on each one of those 5 pillars to kind of explore a little bit more of what those specifically mean.
Mhm.
But one of the things I learned in my research was that is it true that you can, like, if you are not able, you can send somebody in your stead to do Hajj for you?
That's correct. Yes.
Okay,
Mhm.
cool. Awesome. Well, I guess you good if I go
No,
now?
go ahead, man. Yeah. Sorry. It might have been really brief, but I didn't want to
No, it's good. Yeah. I'll try to be brief as well. So high level overview of Christianity, right? It's in the name. It's focused on the Christ, the Messiah, Jesus. So it comes out of the long sort of ancient history of Judaism, and so we have a lot of roots in Jewish religion as well. Old Testament was written, and we now have the New Testament, which was written by a lot of the apostles and disciples that were there with Jesus in the first century. Really, it's hard to explain Christianity without just sort of saying the gospel, right? And that's really the message that Jesus brought, and what Christianity is really about. There's original sin, like we've all sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. We have a penalty for that sin, which is death. We can't pay that. The wrath of God is on us, and if we don't have the sacrifice of Jesus, if we don't have that on us, the wrath of God remains on us. And so the message of Jesus is good news that we don't have to pay the penalty for our sin. He has come to take that penalty on himself. God came down, the word God with us, Emmanuel, God with us. So God sent his son Jesus to die on the cross for our sins, that if we confess with our mouth that Jesus is Lord and believe in our hearts that God rose him from the dead, that we too would have eternal life. And he did that because he loves us, and he's a gracious God and wanted to provide a way to rescue us by sacrificing himself. So that really is Christianity 101, that God provided a way, just like back in the day with Abraham and Isaac. You guys believe that it was Ishmael, but that God provided a sacrifice so that we didn't have to take that sacrifice. Right. Anyway, so yeah, that really is Christianity 101. It's God rescuing us from the penalty of our sin through Jesus Christ.
I forgot to include something very important.
Yeah.
That we as Muslims believe in Jesus, peace be upon him. But one of the main differences is that we believe that, he was a prophet and a Messiah, but he wasn't the son of God or a God man. But in Islam, it's an article of faith. Like, we have to believe in Jesus as a prophet. From my understanding, Islam is the only non-Christian faith religion that makes it like an order for you to believe in Jesus. So I just wanted to throw that out there. Very important, because I think that some people might not know that Muslims also believe in Jesus as a prophet.
Yeah, no. And that's, to be honest, like, back when I knew nothing about Islam, I don't think that you could have even tried to convince me that you guys believed that Jesus was a real person. Like, I just thought it was completely devoid of that. I think that there is a big difference there in who you guys say that he is, or sorry, who the Quran says he is versus who the Bible says that he is, specifically the New Testament. But there's a lot of also like prophecies in the Old Testament that he fulfilled in his life that are recorded in the New Testament. But yeah, like that's one of the things that I thought was really interesting. And I love that you guys do sort of honor and revere Jesus as a prophet. And I honestly think that allows us to have really good conversations around who we believe he is versus who you believe he is. I've had conversations with a friend who is a Jew who it was a bit more of a stumbling block for him, like to have a conversation around Jesus, because he was kind of told from an early age that's sort of like a topic you're not supposed to talk about. Young Jewish people in Israel, from what I've studied and understood, like they're not supposed to read the New Testament at all. They're supposed to stay away from it. There's actually forbidden passages in the Old Testament that they're not really supposed to read either, because it alludes to Jesus. There was one in Isaiah and one in Psalms. And I'd have to research that again to figure out exactly which ones those were. I want to say it was like Psalm 55 maybe, and like Isaiah. I don't remember. I'm getting those mixed up. I could look those up real quick.
Are you saying that there are verses that they have to kind of skip over, or do they just not acknowledge that it's a verse in their Bible?
No, they acknowledge that it is a verse in their Bible. They just don't they don't read it. They skip over it.
I never heard that. That's interesting.
Yeah. So there's a really cool ministry called, oh shoot, my wife follows it and loves it. I think it's One for Israel is the title of it. And basically they kind of break down some of those things as well. So that would be a good resource.
You know what would be a better resource? Maybe in the future, if we can get somebody of the Jewish faith, and then we'd have a Muslim, Jew, and a Christian on the same podcast like that.
Yeah.
That'd be amazing.
I would love that, man. That would be awesome. No, you and I, so I guess let's kind of back up as well, and talk a little bit about now that we've sort of done the sort of high level overviews of our faiths, let's talk a little bit about how we met, and then sort of some of the conversations we've already had and the beginnings of this podcast, like why we decided to do this.
When Nick told me about this idea, I think you were the one who came up with it first. And I think it's such a wonderful thing to do. Like, we definitely need more of this, more interaction, more communication, especially between Islam and Christianity in the US. I kind of feel like there's a gap, and I kind of blame both sides. Like, I think both sides are kind of afraid to cross that gap or to cross that bridge, or whatever analogy you want to use, to extend a hand and reach out to the other person. And for me personally, what I want to do, what I'm hoping to do through these series of episodes of these podcasts that we do, is to kind of get rid of the negative stereotypes associated with Islam. Like Nick, for example, one of the reasons why I respect you is because so you have an understanding of my religion and me as a Muslim, but I don't feel like never once have you attacked the religion or demonized it. And I feel like, unfortunately, nowadays, that happens a lot. Like, I feel like hating on Islam, it's a big moneymaker, whether it's through books or videos. But let me pump the brakes a little bit. There's a difference between that, just kind of demonizing and attacking it, and actually questioning it. I think that's a big difference. And I'm hoping that we can definitely talk about that. Whatever questions you have, whatever questions listeners may have, definitely, I would love to talk about it. But yeah, so that's one of the reasons why I'm so excited to do these series, is just to get more people exposed to the religion of Islam so they get a better understanding of it. And not everyone's going to agree. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. Just like how I don't have to agree about Christian views or theologies. Otherwise, I'd be a Christian. So it's kind of a natural thing. Like it's okay. And I think that's another good point, to do this podcast, is to show that it's okay to have different faiths, and that we're all Americans, speaking about just the community or the population in the US. It's okay to have different faiths. It's in the Constitution that we have the right to practice, which faith, whatever we want. But I'm hoping to at least shed a light on Islam and Muslims in general, and just to show everybody that, hey, we're normal people just like you. Nicholas and I, we have these conversations a lot. I'm just trying to earn a living. I'm trying to practice my faith to the best that I can, take care of my family, try to take care of my neighbors, try to help people in need. That's a big part of my religion as well. I think I mentioned that in the beginning, giving to charity and just helping out people. And also, just to show, like I was saying, not only that we're down to earth, but we can talk about normal things too. It doesn't always have to be heavy, religious topics. Don't be afraid of your Muslim neighbor. I'm hoping that through these series, you'll hear a different perspective, and hopefully it'll give you just a better understanding, and maybe it'll give you the courage. And this is for the Muslim listeners as well. Hopefully you'll get the courage. You'll hear more about Christianity, and you'll get the courage to extend out your hand and reach out to your Christian and Jewish neighbors, or whoever it might be.
Yeah, thank you. That's awesome. And I really think that encapsulates a lot of what we wanted to do with this podcast. And yeah, it really stemmed from us starting this friendship, right? And being really, I don't know if you were super surprised, but I was kind of surprised just at the level of candor that we could have with each other and not get frustrated. I mean, I don't feel like I get frustrated when I talk with people. I've always loved to hear other people's ideas, and I've never really held it against them. I may vehemently disagree with their views, but I mean, they're a human being as well. You know what I mean? And they're entitled to their opinions and their views. And so I'd much rather have a respectful conversation and, stay friends versus letting something, like differences of our faith come between us. And that was one of the things that I was like, man, like, I really wish we could kind of like bottle this up and like present it to people and say, look, like here are two guys from differing worldviews, differing religions, but they're both Americans. They're both, brothers in this country, and we can have a good conversation, find the things that we agree with, find the things that we disagree with, but respectfully respect each other when it comes to those differences, And I think that that's something that's sort of lost today, at least in a lot of things that I see, right? I feel like I see a lot of people becoming polarized because of their political differences, their religious differences, socioeconomic differences, et cetera. Yeah. And so I thought it would be fun to be able to explore some of these conversations that we've already had. You and I have sat down with other Muslim families, which that's a fun story I'd love to tell someday. But and then like we also sat down and had a great conversation with an atheist friend of yours. And it was funny because both of us like came to the conclusion like afterwards that we were like, man, like how could you have like no basis for morality and still like say, no, there is objective moral truth when you have nothing to stand that on other than this shifting thing of sort of a societal agreement around what morality is, right? And so that's one of the things that I think is cool that we both really agree on, is that there is this foundational, moral law given by a moral law giver, who is God. We have different views of who that God is, but it's outside of ourselves. So yeah, it was cool to be able to see those things and those different dynamics.
I felt like we were kind of tag teaming a little bit, like during that time. I'm like, yeah, like that also proved to me like we do have so much in common. Yes, we have differences, but there are so many things that we can unite upon. And I'm hoping maybe we can light the spark to do that, so that way we can kind of come together instead of being afraid of the other.
Yeah.
And I think, like I said, it's a problem on both sides.
Exactly. Yeah. And I wanted to touch on that too. I had a pastor one time at our church. He was an African-American pastor, came in and really wanted to kind of shake up, sort of white evangelicals who live in Johnson County and said some things that were sort of tongue in cheek / hard to hear. But he basically was like, look, here in Kansas City, and even in this church, there are some white people who hate Black people. And there are Black people who hate white people. We have to get over that. And so like, I wanted to kind of say the same thing, like that there are definitely prejudices that are going on both sides of the fence. You know what I mean? And again, I don't want to assume people's motives. And I try not to assume people's motives at all until they specifically tell me with their mouth, like, I don't like you because of this. And then it'll confirm that or whatever. But yeah, like I definitely had some prejudices that I didn't even realize that I had before. And it wasn't that I hated Muslims or that I hated Islam. I just didn't really know much about that culture, and it was sort of foreign to me. And all I really knew was kind of what the news and the media kind of portrayed it as. And there was a little bit of like mysteriousness and a lot of people fear the unknown. And the more I kind of got to know that culture and that religion a little bit more, I realized, man, like these people are coming, like a lot of them. I know that you were born in the United States, but a lot of Muslims that are coming over from Middle Eastern countries or India, coming here to America to make a better life for themselves. A lot of them are just good people that are trying to make a better life for themselves. You know what I mean? And they're probably coming here in culture shock for them as well. Yeah. So it was one of those things where I feel like God was really starting to open my heart and my eyes to all of these people that are in my backyard, my neighbors, coworkers, et cetera, that I just didn't really know much about. And I wanted to reach out. So that's, long story short, that's kind of how you and I met. There was my church and your mosque did a interfaith dinner together. And so we met and had dinner together. And it was awesome to be able to meet, somebody who was like my same age, married for about the same amount of years, had kids the same age, And yeah, it was a really cool experience, and one that I really hope that other Christians will break out of their comfort zone, reach out their hand of friendship, and say hello to their Muslim neighbors and coworkers.
I think you touched on something really important as well. Yeah, I want my, Muslim brothers and sisters to do the same thing, but I think it would help them if they knew a little bit about Christianity, because that's a good icebreaker. And like personally, that helped me. Like I don't have any like classical education or degrees when it comes to comparative religion or anything like that. Just a lot of YouTube videos and podcasts and things like that. I think I have a good foundation of the Christian religion where I can have a good discussion with a Christian. Sometimes it might not be always 100% accurate, and that's where I welcome the feedback from my understanding of the religion. But I think that like if we can teach people through our religion, I'll share my perspective, you share your perspective. Then once people start learning about the other's religion, I think it'll give them a little bit more courage. I don't know why I keep going back to that word, but yeah, it'll make it a little bit easier. So that way you can kind of have a foundation when you're speaking to the person of the other faith, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it totally does. I think that that's going to be paramount for a lot of people, being good neighbors to each other, you know what I mean? And getting along and not having this sort of fear of the unknown on both sides of the fence. And so, yeah. And like, I'll talk a little bit about this, when the first couple times that you invited us over to your house for dinner, one of those times there were like two other families, I think. Yeah, two other families. And again, like the American in me, like I reached out my hands to shake the hands of the women. And I was like, hey, I'm Nicholas. It's nice to meet you. And like, they just kept their hands kind of folded right here, and they didn't like extend their hand. And I felt so weird. But like, I just had to tell myself in the back of the head, like, it's not that they don't like me. That's just their culture. Like, there is a big difference culturally in how men interact with women in Muslim cultures. It's not across the board 100% the same. But yeah, it was weird to me, but I also wanted to respect them as women. And like, I've met people who like the girl like gave me a big hug the first time that she met me versus like shaking hands and I always try to let the other person kind of gauge what they want to do with that. Cause I don't, I sort of have my own like boundary rules about women. I definitely want to respect and honor women's boundaries and stuff. So that's why I usually just extend a hand to shake. So that was pretty, I felt like I was kind of thrown into the deep end. Here I am in this house with families where the women are all dressed in hijab, and it is like, I've never been around this many people wearing hijab before. And it was pretty interesting and really cool to be able to learn a little bit about the culture and see you guys. But
so that's my bad, man. I'll take a little responsibility. Maybe I should have like prepped you a little bit, like, hey, when it comes to the women, just say hi from afar. But I'm curious now, since I don't think I've asked you this question before, but nice. How nervous were you the first time you came to my house? But keep in mind, we've met once before. Yeah. At your pastor's house. But when you came to my house, how nervous were you? Like until we started talking and, you got a little bit more comfortable.
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't I would say nervous in a good way, like an exciting way. Like I wouldn't say I think part of me was just like, man, I hope I don't like do something or say something that's offensive. And like, dude, it's hilarious because I feel like the more that I get to know you and your wife and like your family, like the more I realize that you guys are just so much very similar to any other family. You just have a few like cultural differences, you know what I mean? Because of your religion and sort of where some of your family grew up. And I kind of feel like there's always this like little thing in the back of my head of like I don't want to do something that's like going to offend or disrespect you in any way. But like if I were to meet like a white friend at work and I were to go over to, well, I don't even want to say white, just I'll say like more Western Christian, not even Christian, just more Western American is what I meant by that. So even if it was like a black family or whatever, like, I don't feel like I'd have that same thought in the back of my head. Like, I hope I don't do or say anything that's disrespectful. But like I was saying, the more that I get to know you guys, the more I realize, man, I don't need to like try to be super careful about those things. I don't think it makes me treat you guys any differently, but like in a way, it was getting to know a culture I really knew nothing about. Like I've known a lot of people in Latin culture, in Asian culture, in Black culture, and so like those aren't foreign to me, right? And so I feel like it was that sort of excited nervousness of coming over, of like I don't know much about Middle Eastern culture at all, or Islam, Islamic culture, and so it was that it was like an excited nervousness. What about you?
I was going to say I was a little nervous, but from the perspective of I want to be as hospitable as possible, and I try to do that with whichever guest comes to my house. Christian, Muslim, white, Black, yellow, whoever comes to my house, I want them to feel like they're just so welcome, and I want them to be so comfortable. So that's my goal every time someone comes into my house. But with you and your family, I felt like I wanted to step it up a little bit, because I was thinking in the back of my mind, like I have to give Nicholas and his family a good impression. Maybe this is the first time he goes into a Muslim's home. And, usually they say the first impressions usually last. So I felt a little pressure, but it's not like I was like sweating or anything, but that was kind of in the back of my mind is I just, I want them to see, how we are, and I want them to feel comfortable, and I want to leave a good lasting impression. So I was a little nervous, but just from that aspect, like I was also, happy as well. Because, me, I love talking about religion, and I love interfaith dialogue. So like, I was really looking forward to that as well. So
and we had even that first night, just
dove right in.
And like, dude, that is the one thing that I will say, that we honestly were just floored at the level of hospitality. I can't say words. Hospitality, man. Like just the food and the drinks and the mint tea, which was just phenomenal. That was delicious. And man, I remember I took a picture of the little teacup that your wife served me. I still have that picture. It was such a beautiful little thing. And I can't remember. I think you told me that the inscription on the cup said "friend" or something. Maybe I'm misremembering that.
I got to look for that cup now.
Yeah, they were like the little glass with the gold on them, and there's some inscriptions on there. But and then like, dude, I didn't know how to politely tell you, like I could not eat any more dessert. You know what I'm saying? Like you guys had like 4 or 5 desserts. It was so delicious. But I was like, I'm so stuffed. I feel like I have to keep eating. Because in some cultures, if you don't finish the food, it's sort of an insult. And I was like, surely they don't think that I'm a fatty, and I can't fit any more in my stomach. But no, it was beautiful, and it was and we were so happy to be able to come back again. And what was weird was that was also at the time when we still lived in our like 1,000 square foot duplex with did we have 4 kiddos at the time? Yeah, Karis was just a baby. So like it was so crammed, and we didn't have any room to have you guys over. So that was one of the things that we loved about having our new house. We could finally invite you guys over. And, I kept telling myself, like, don't like offer like a bourbon, don't offer, don't offer the bacon wrapped shrimps, or, you know what I'm saying? Cause like, I love joking around and playing like with the different, that about me now, but, that was another thing too, is like how much can I joke around and it be okay? You know what I'm saying? And I think still to this day, like ask you sometimes like, hey, is it okay if I joke about this thing? Cause I don't want to disrespect or dishonor you guys in any way. So
you don't have to ask anymore. You don't have to do it. From now on, don't just do it. My friend who was from Israel, that was one of the things that I joked with him about. I was like, hey man, you can go get a hot ham and cheese sandwich with me after lunch, or for lunch. So, at first I was kind of disappointed. Like when you didn't tell me about your housing situation, I was like, man, like maybe he didn't enjoy himself when he came to my house, or he just doesn't want to hang out. Like, cause in my mind, I'm like, oh, he didn't invite me. And then when he told me, I was like, dude, I just wanted to hang out with you. Like, and then I almost gave you a hard time. I'm like, come on, you should know me better than that. Like, I don't care about the size of the house or how much money you make. You know, like you probably make more money than me, but, but I thought that was interesting. Like because I kept telling you, I said, man, I don't care about this. Even if we just hung out outside or whatever, like, because I just wanted to hang out with you again. For me, that's what's more important, just friendship. I'm just happy, like you said, to meet someone who's around my age. Come to find out we have so many similar interests. Yeah, man. And then likewise, you guys are very hospitable, and thank you again. Like, especially the first time you invited us to your house, like, I felt comfortable. Nadira felt comfortable as well. And when she feels comfortable, I know for sure that, the situation was good, because she's really shy and this and that. So, thank you again. Yeah. So that was, I can't wait for us to hang out and have dinner. I'm just so sick of COVID. Like, I feel like
I agree. Yeah, I am too, man. We would love to have you guys over. So, and I've told you too, like, as soon as you guys feel comfortable, we would love to have you guys over again. And yeah, that was honestly like really cool. Like, just getting to know you guys, like, getting to know a little bit about where your wife grew up and all of that was super interesting, just because, from us Westerners, like growing up in that same time period, like hearing about all of this stuff on the news going on in that area. I don't want to, speak out of turn and talk about those things, but yeah, like it was just neat to get a perspective of that when you don't come across that all the time, to like hear somebody from that perspective that was there and lived in that area in that time frame. So
for sure. When you mentioned the other side of the world, I think if somebody can afford it, if they can visit a country outside of the US, I think that'll also give them a different perspective. Oddly enough, it gave me a different perspective because, I lived in Palestine for a few years. But for me, it was a huge culture shock because at that time we were in California. I felt comfortable. And I don't know if I told you this, but when our upbringing, like my parents weren't that religious. So we were doing stuff. We were celebrating Easter and Christmas and stuff. I don't know if I ever told you about that.
No, you haven't told me that. That's awesome.
Yeah. And so my point is, like, I didn't know that much about the language, Arabic, or about Islam or anything. So going from that state to living in the West Bank, it was a complete culture shock. The flight over there, I was crying the whole time because I didn't want to go. I was 12 years old.
Yeah, I was going to ask how old you were. 12.
Yeah.
Okay.
This was in 95. So,
and you up until this point, up until 12, you were born and raised in America, lived in North Carolina and California.
Right?
Yes. Yeah.
Yep. So when I got there, complete culture shock. I didn't know the language. And what's interesting is that people refer to me over there as the American. Here, I look like a foreigner.
Right.
So I'm like a foreigner. And over there, I'm a foreigner. It's very strange. I was referred to as the American. And at the time, it was one of the hardest things I've ever went through in my life. Like, it sounds weird. Like, I'm encouraging people to check out or to visit a place. I don't want to say third world country, but other than America, really gives you different perspective. So at the time, I was really struggling. But after the time, like, when I came back to the States and I reflected back, when I came here, I'm like, wow, we have it so good here. We have paved roads. At the time when I was there wasn't too many paved roads, or I'm like street light, I'm like grass. Wow, there's lawns with grass on, like simple stuff that you wouldn't think twice about. Oh, check out our huge grocery stores, our huge shopping malls, whatever it is. I'm very thankful. At the time I wasn't. I'm like, get me the heck out of here. I just wanted to come back to the States as quickly as I could. But, after a few years, learning about my religion, learning the language and the culture. Now, when I look back at it, I'm like, thank God I went through that experience, because I think it was kind of like a turning point for me. And I wish I can go back in time and talk to my 18-year-old self. Yeah. I wasn't always like a good Muslim, I should say. But yeah, I mean, I recommend it. I mean, if you can at least visit another country, at least try to learn about a different culture or about a different country, because I think that'll also give you a different perspective. Because if you only know, with what you've been raised with, it's hard to get an understanding of where the other person comes from.
Yeah, that's great. And so when did you end up coming back? How long did you live in Palestine?
Yeah, so from 95 to 2001. Oh, that's a funny story. So I came back a few months before 9/11. It was just literally a few months. I think that's a whole nother episode
Yeah.
That was, gosh, that was a tough time.
Yeah. I bet.
Yeah. So that was back in 2001, I think just a few months, maybe a couple months before 9/11. Yeah, it was crazy. I'm just thinking about, I don't know if you remember where you were that, like, I remember. So at that time I was working at I got a job at Subway. That was one of my
you were
first
telling me
jobs.
about your job at Subway.
Yeah.
You'll have to,
I got to tell
the story about the sandwich.
Oh yeah. I don't mind telling that story, but yeah, it was in the morning. I don't remember like what day it was, but I remember watching on the TV, and my brothers had it on because at the time I was living with my brothers in an apartment, and I thought they were watching like an action movie. I'm like, oh, what are you guys watching? And then it sunk in. It's like, oh my God, like what on earth is happening? It was just nuts, man. And I rode my bike. I didn't have a car at the time, so I rode my bike to Subway. And what's interesting when I reflect back on it, they were already teasing me. I feel like it was kind of in a mean way, like, because they knew that, my heritage is, from the Middle East or from Palestine. And I remember one of the jokes, like, they're like, oh, are you going to ram your bike into Subway?
Wow.
I was like, and I kind of laughed along with them because I didn't want to be the odd one out.
Yeah.
And then I'll just say this, I don't want to hog up the mic, but the next day I was going to a community college at that time as well. And my English professor, he's like, we were talking about it, of course. And he was like, yeah, so what do you guys think about what happened? Are you mad? And I was like, whoa, like I felt like he was kind of singling me out as if I would say, yeah, I'm so happy that happened or something along those lines, like, of course. Yeah. Like you're asking me how I feel about what happened. It's horrible. 3,000 plus people, died on that day. And for me, it was hard because it was people who claimed to be Muslims, who did that. So for me, I felt like it was a dangerous time. I was finally getting facial hair at that age. And my brother's like, shave it off. Because I was trying to grow like a goatee. He was like, shave off your goatee. And if anyone asks you, like you're Mexican or whatever, like, because we were kind of fearful at that time. I don't know if you remember, but there was attacks. People who they were actually Sikhs who were being attacked, not Muslims. There's a couple of instances, but anyways, I mean, I feel like that kind of changed the world and changed the U.S. and how people saw Muslims. So like, I felt like it was extra hard on me. And what's interesting is I wasn't practicing too much at that time, but
thank you for your perspective on that. That's really interesting to hear. I actually haven't heard that story yet. So it's one of those things that like, I feel like that there was a lot of misinformation going on around the Muslim or around Muslims and the Islamic religion at that time. And I was in the Army at that time when it happened. I was actually at Johnson County Community College taking a class. I forgot which class it was. I ended up dropping all of those classes because we were getting ready to go to Afghanistan. Then I was told from my personnel division in my unit that I should drop all of my classes, get things prepared, get ready to go. We're probably going to get called up. And I was attached to a medical unit in the Army. And so we were a field hospital. And so we were going to be, now my unit did end up going on in 2003 and 2004. Yeah, it was like early 2004 when they actually ended up being deployed, and they were like in charge of the main field hospital in Afghanistan. But that's also around the same time that I ended up getting out of the military. So that's kind of where I was at in that. And again, I don't feel like that there were as many Muslims in America at that time, or I just didn't really know about them. You know what I mean? There's definitely a lot more now. And so, And then, again, I think that that's one of the things that we really want to tackle with this podcast is to be able to hear different perspectives, listen to the perceptions, and really try to break down some of those misconceptions, some of those like challenge people's potential prejudices that they have. I was intellectually honest enough with myself to realize, I do have some prejudices. Like I said, I didn't hate anybody. Like I didn't wish ill to anybody. I didn't think I was better than anybody, like as far as like, race goes, but I just didn't have a good picture of who Muslims were. And now that I've gone into it a little bit more and studied it myself a little bit more, got to know you and your family and some other Muslims as well. And I've actually read a couple of books from Muslims and ex-Muslims. I know one of the guys, you're not a huge fan of him, but Nabil Qureshi, his book, honestly, Seeking Allah, Finding Jesus, that book really, really gave me a great picture of what Islam is. Now, he does go into the book later on to talk about the things that he didn't, like he started to disagree with as he researched it more and questioned it more. So that was just part of his journey. But the sort of beginning part of that book, when he was talking about, I still remember this when he talked about, he was like, when I think of the perfect Muslim, I think of my mother. And I was like, man, like I've never really thought about that. You know what I mean? And then when I met your mom, Ruby, I was like, she's just this sweet like lady, you know what I mean? And like, she's like so sweet and hospitable. And like, and that kind of made me think of what Nabil was talking about when he was talking about his mom, and like, I was just like, man, I really need to push some of these push some of these preconceived notions, some of these presuppositions that I had coming to the table, and really open my heart and mind when interfacing with people from a Muslim background. So.
As much as I disagreed with his tactics or with his way of explaining about Islam, I'm happy at least that the book that you read from him, it kind of opened you up a little bit to the idea of Islam, or at least learning more about Islam. So if there's one good thing to say about him, since he did pass away like several years ago, I believe, right? Yeah, I'm happy at least that like you kind of benefited from what he was talking about.
Right. Yeah. Like I know a lot of other Christians who have really benefited from his book in their perception of Islam and Muslims. So I think it's a good resource for Christians who don't know much about Islam. I think that's a really good resource. I will also say the other great resource is practicing Muslims. If you want to learn and know about Islam and sort of culture around the areas that maybe they grew up, then go speak with them. Like that book was great, but I will say I've learned so much more just interfacing with you and talking with you and your family.
Yeah, I agree. That's the best way. You're right. Like, we could learn only so much with reading books, but yeah, you get the best experience and the best information straight from the source. Straight from, like if I want to try to learn about Christianity, I want to try to go to the source. We talked about this before. If there's something wrong with me, I want to go to the doctor to figure out, not to a lawyer who's going to tell me what's wrong with my body. So you're right. So the source is the best, going to a practicing Muslim or a practicing Christian. I think that's a really good way of learning, and it's a good way to break the ice and the barrier. Like I keep talking about, to extend your hand, and reach out to the other side. And we talked about this many times, like we're not trying to convert each other when we talk about religion, when we talk about Islam, we talk about Christianity. And we always say this as well. You hope one day that I become Christian, and right. I, hope one day that you become a Muslim. But, if that's what it is, then, so be it. As long as we're always civil and we can set a good example to others, like, hey, this can be done. We can live side by side. I don't want to go on a preaching tirade.
Oh, you're good, dude. I love this stuff because and not just live side by side, but we can be friends.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. Like not just we can tolerate each other.
Yeah,
right. Like we can be friends and have dinner together and talk about video games and do a podcast like this. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So like for me, like that's really the thing is. Like, sure, tolerance is great for society, but just tolerating somebody is different than putting that tolerance aside and becoming friends, right? And I think that that's sort of the next step, I think about this with really any sort of, maybe dichotomy is not the right word, but any sort of polarization of views, Republican and Democrat, or Christian and Muslim, and et cetera. The list goes on. I'm not going to think of all of them right now. We can have those disagreements and we can have those differences, but we can still be friends. You know what I mean? At the end of the day, and not just this sort of, I don't want to say closed-mindedness, but not just this sort of, I guess I'll say bitter tolerance of like, okay, well, they're going to do their thing and they live their way, and I'm going to live my way because whatever. And then we just sort of tolerate each other. I feel like we can go past that and actually build friendships that last, that are good. And so what I would say to a lot of Christians who are listening right now, I would just encourage them to not make your Muslim neighbor a project, right? Like, sure, like as a Christian, we like evangelism is a huge thing because we believe that the gospel message is for everybody, for all who believe, right? For anybody who has ears, let them listen. And so we believe that people are not walking into heaven unless it's through the name of Jesus. So of course we're going to want to tell people about Jesus. And so, I've told you about the gospel. I've told you about who we say Jesus is. And so you sort of know where I'm coming from on that. Hopefully I've not done it in a way that has made you feel like I'm like, you told me a story once of an old friend of yours trying to, I think you used the term witness you. I mean, we would use that term as well, but what really sounded like he was doing was saying turn or burn. You have to convert. Whereas that message is true, but that's not the way that we should do that. It was not tactful. It was not done in a way, I think, that is helpful. Exactly what you said. We both have this hope that, that God is going to reach the either and sort of lead them into the truth of what we believe is the truth. But at the end of the day, if we're not going to let that get in the way of us being friends. And we're not going to try to outwork each other and saying like, no, I'm going to win him over. I know I'm going to win him over, because from a Christian mindset, we can't win anybody over, right? Like we can give the gospel, we can plant a seed, but we can't reap a harvest, right? We can't change anybody's mind. We can't change anybody's heart. All we can do is love our neighbor, give them the gospel, and let God call them to himself. And so, I just really want to encourage, Bible believing Christians that we really need to be reaching out in friendship and in love, not to try to win people over, but just to be obedient to Jesus in loving our neighbor. You know what I mean? So
for sure, man, that's very well said. And it's very, very similar on our side of the aisle as well, where, of course we're taught, you should love for your brother what you love for yourself. And we really try to take that to heart, where, if I believe that Islam, is the way, to get into paradise, kind of like what you're saying, then of course I want to share that with you and I want to share that. But we're also taught in the Quran, it says there's no compulsion in religion. So you can't force it on anybody. And also, you're right. The best we can do, the best I can do is just convey the message. There's only one God, and Muhammad, peace be upon him, was the last and final messenger. And you're right. Whoever I convey this message to, I'm not going to be the one that's going to change their mind. Only God can do that. So from that aspect, I completely agree with you. That's, we can't control someone else's heart, or, what they feel, or force them to believe in something that we believe in. But I'll just say this. Also, we're kind of like what you're talking about. We're also taught that when you're trying to convey the message of Islam, you have to do it in a nice way, the best way that you can, with wisdom, with the best eloquence, with the best respect that you can. We're not taught that, you're supposed to, curse the God of the other religion, whatever it is, because they'll curse back at our God, and we don't want it to reach that point. My point is, you kind of like what you're saying. You have to be gentle. There's a right way of doing things and there's a wrong way of doing things. And kind of like with my old friend who tried to witness me, I felt like even from the Christian perspective, it seemed like it was a horrible way of doing it. Like I still remember some of the questions he would ask, like, have you looked at a woman lustfully ever in your life? It's like he wants me to say yes to those questions, kind of like what you're saying. What did you say? Turn or burn or something, something like
Right.
that. But yeah, I completely agree with you. And this comes to both sides. If you're trying to talk about your faith, try to do it in the best manner. Don't start off, for example, by saying, "Oh, if you don't believe what I believe, you're going to go to hell."
Mhm.
No, like technically, that's what we both believe. Yes, but there's just a nice way you can have a nice conversation, and sometimes you can even benefit. Like there's a lot of times where I benefit from what you're saying. I learned something new that I didn't. And for me, that's still a win.
Yeah, no, thank you. That's great. That one of the quotes that comes to my mind from the Christian perspective is 1 Peter 3:15, and it says, "Set apart in your heart Christ as Lord, and always be prepared to give a defense to anyone who asks about the hope that is in you, and do so with gentleness and respect." And so basically what it's saying there is anybody who's like asking you questions about your faith, right? You need to do that with gentleness and respect. That other person may be coming sort of hot-headed at you and maybe trying to trap you or whatever, or they genuinely might be asking a question. But that's one of the verses that I absolutely love because it really encapsulates this gentleness and respect aspect of it. And yeah, usually whenever we see Jesus in the New Testament talking to sinners, he's always doing so in a loving way. Now, he didn't talk to the religious leaders of that time who were sort of exploiting people because of religion. He talked to them very strongly. And but yeah, really anytime he was interfacing with the people and the sinners that he came to save, like he was doing so with gentleness and respect and love.
I like that. What I was thinking about that. I love Jesus. Peace be upon him. May Allah's blessings be upon him. As you were saying that, when he was trying to talk to the people, I feel so bad for him because they gave him such a hard time. The Jews at that time, they tried to, you're talking about like you shouldn't try to corner people or like they tried to do that. They tried to outwit him all the time. Like it's just interesting. That's when I read the New Testament, there's just so many different instances where they tried to corner him. They tried to catch him out basically, but he outwitted them. He was very intelligent and kind of like what you're saying. When it came to the people, he was, very gentle. But you're right. When it came to the religious leaders, he kind of let them have it. Like I remember just a couple of quotes off the top of my head. Like, didn't he call them like vipers or snakes?
Yeah,
hypocrites and
den of vipers. So I've had there's some people that kind of made it like a joke about that, where they're like, we called them like sons of serpents, and we have a modern day equivalent of that. It's son of a. I'm like, I don't know if like it's that harsh. Maybe it was back in the Jewish culture, like the term that he used was like a really, really harsh term. But yeah, like he was very harsh. And like the time that he walked into the temple and they were extorting people, selling.
He whipped them? He got out the whip, or wasn't it was like a stick and he was.
So he sat down, he fashioned a whip out of reeds, and then he went through, overturning the tables with the money on them, whipping all of the animals. Now, it doesn't necessarily say in any of the translations that he whipped them. So I don't think he actually hit people, but it does say that they ran, they kind of scattered. He made a huge commotion, and it was in a way sort of this violent outburst, and I use that term very purposely. It was violent. He had a weapon in his hand. He was whipping animals and chasing people around. And he did so with sort of a righteous anger. And so, like the Bible tells us, I'm trying to remember the exact quote, but it says something along the lines of, be angry and do not sin. So it's not a sin to be angry about something, especially if it's like a righteous anger, like, human trafficking. I'm angry about human trafficking, but I'm not going to turn into a vigilante and go shoot the people in the head that do that, right? There's a justice that is waiting for them in the next life. And
just out of curiosity,
we were kind of getting down a different.
No, it's okay.
Do
you know why he whipped the animals? Like, I don't remember. Do you remember? Do you know what the purpose of that was?
To cause a commotion, to get the animals to run and scatter,
and to get them out of there. Okay,
he wasn't like whipping the animals because he was like trying to beat a dead horse or anything. No,
that makes sense. To cause a commotion to get them to.
Yes, yeah. It was more like if you're riding a horse and you kind of whip the backside of the horse to make him go faster.
I see.
Ace Ventura would have words with you, but
I love that movie.
I do too, man. We should do like a episode about 90s throwback movies.
Oh my God. The 90s. I think that was one of my favorite decades. Everything was good. The movies, 90s action movies.
Oh man. Music.
I agree. It was a good time. Good period.
We'll do a nostalgia episode. That would be fun.
For sure.
Well, I think that we're kind of coming to a natural end here. Are there any last comments you want to make for this first kind of episode that we've done?
I just want to say thank you for listening to us, and I hope you guys continue to support us. And if you have any ideas, or if there's anything that you guys would like us to talk about, please let us know. Nicholas and I would definitely like to hear about your thoughts and your opinions. I have really good hopes about this. I don't know. It's kind of weird. I have a feeling that, this is going to be something good and beneficial to a lot of people. So, I feel like this is a good start, good episode so far. And I really look forward to the rest of the episodes that we're planning on recording. We have so many topics, you guys, like throughout the day. Yeah. Today, especially today, I was bombarding Nick. I'm like, dude, we can talk about this. We can talk about that. It's going to blow your minds. I can't wait to talk about it.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I'll echo that as well. Like we tend to, when we have conversations, we tend to just rabbit trail and then like, oh, well, what do you mean about this? And then we kind of, go in depth on those things. And so, yeah, I'm really excited to see where a lot of this goes. Like I said earlier, I really feel like, like a secondary purpose of this podcast really is to help encourage other people to have these conversations as well, to help encourage people that you can have conversations with people. You can agree, you can disagree, and you can still be friends. Yep. Not just sort of this bitter tolerance where you kind of bite your lip and keep walking, but that you can really still be friends with people that have disagreements on things. So yeah, there's that. And yeah, we're just super excited to have these conversations. Like Emad said, if there are topics that you would love to hear about, let us know. Like, we really want to make this not just about us having a conversation, but make it also a resource for you to help encourage and equip you guys as well. So yeah, with that, we'll bring it to a close. And yeah, cool.
All right, take it easy, guys. And thank you again for listening.
Yeah.